please, if you're watching this at a later date, we just refer to Monday's city council meeting. That was on August 4th, where we talk about the audit, and you can also see what the council actions were. That was my agenda item. Our plan for the vote on Tuesday. Do we want people coverage? I can do an afternoon chunk, but I am busy in the morning with my job.
I mean, technically, we're not allowed to be anywhere near this and influence it, right? So I don't think there's anything more we can do, is there?
We can stand outside. We absolutely can stand outside.
Do we want like a little table that says like, ask me about the articles?
We could just make copies of the FAQ in case people want to stop and chat about it on the way in and put a table out there.
Like
I'll be sitting inside.
Nice.
And then counting.
They can't carry any election material in the vote.
Correct.
Really? They can't take our FAQ?
Well,
No.
they don't have to wait it. Nobody's going to strip search them. Trust me. It ain't happening.
I feel like not my job.
I mean, I think, I have some of my old campaign signs, and I can cover my sign and say, vote yes on articles, or...
Yeah, I don't think I want to lobby people. I think it would be appropriate to just have a little table with somebody sitting there that says, if you have questions about what's on the ballot, please stop and chat.
Yeah.
That feels, at this point, we've made it clear what we think ought to happen, and I don't really want to try and convince people on the way in the door.
Yeah.
And I just posted another long
If they make it to the door,
explanation
they
on
already
Facebook.
decide.
Kinda, yeah.
This is true.
You just...
I just posted another long
Oh, really?
on Facebook.
All right.
Well, more or less in response to the letters in the Chronicle. Very straightforward, and this is each article what they are.
Great.
Okay. So I'm willing to sit at a table from probably more like 1 to, we're going till 7.
Honestly, the time to do it would be, as the polls open at 8 for an hour, over lunch hour, and from 5 to 6.
I can do 8 a.m. to like 10, 9:30.
Nice.
And then I can swing back by around lunchtime.
Okay.
About noon.
Yeah, I can. If you covered that first rush, I can cover lunch rush, and then I can cover the after, kind of 4 to 6 time frame.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think that'll get most people.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking to the late afternoon.
yeah. Okay, we can talk offline. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for.
And I don't know if Hal wants to come or Travis is Susie can't, and Travis, depending on
Yeah, I suspect he can't during the day.
how his school.
So we just want to make a little placard or something to kind of sit on the table, or an easel.
Yeah, I got some materials at home. Is it okay if it's kind of, I can cut out a little
maybe it's
logo of the
fine.
city and I'll just say, ask me about that.
Yeah.
If you have any questions.
I didn't even know that you want the logo of the city. I think you could just have a
That's
sign
true.
that says,
I was gonna
we're on the task force, the financial task force.
Yeah.
Ask us if you have any questions.
Yeah.
Yep, love it.
All right, so
Yeah.
that, again, I want to be careful not to...
Yes.
Right. We can have our FAQ with us in case I
Absolutely.
see something.
Yeah, at that point, you can
If you have
say to people, if you have questions, let's just go through it quick and we'll take a look at them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I will drop by, but I probably will not sit there.
That's okay.
Yeah, this is kind of up to us.
Go
But
ahead.
the anticipation is only 35 people are going to vote.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating 150.
Yeah.
I'll be thrilled if we see 150 people. I'll be satisfied if we see 100.
What about a councilman sitting out there? You may not. And you play 2 roles.
I think it's appropriate, as long as all she's doing is saying, if you have questions, I'm here to answer them, and she's not lobbying people.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a totally appropriate thing for a public official to do.
Well, and her position as the council member on the task force.
Okay. Like, for example, I met with the person and I asked them what they thought about each article, and they offered what they were wanting to vote, and I just heard it because all I'm moving forward, our next item is budgeting process and plan. I don't think we have to go into too much yet. I can show you like a little graphic that VLCT made up, but all I'm doing is documenting and going to reference it in the future, and because I just want to know the makeup or at least some reasoning behind how people feel one way or another. I'm not gonna say you're wrong and you know, that's just also not totally not my character, but I also hear your concern of like, are you sure, like, that's correct. You know what I mean? Like,
Really?
yeah.
Honestly, I had trouble Monday night at the meeting with, her name is now like escaping me, her husband, who really pushed about the fire truck. And he was not listening to one thing I have to say. Gene Laser. And in my opinion, he was not interested in anything I had to say.
So
And
here's the
all
deal.
I- and I just-
Any person is welcome to share their opinion. And if they don't, if they're not interested in hearing
Right.
my opinion or your opinion, then our answer is that's okay. Really, my only function at that point, we've done everything we can to educate folks.
Right.
So my only function is to say, do you have any final questions? And it's up
Yeah.
to you. For
Well,
anybody.
and that's really what I was doing in my thing I wrote today, was because I wanted to say, like, one of the things that Mr. Blay said in the paper, in the article, was Article 5 is already decided. And I said, Article 5 is not decided. We have to ask the voters to increase our tax rate by $220. Not rate, excuse me. Our requested tax revenue needed to run the city for this year by $220,000. It has not yet been approved. I mean, we're gonna pay it one way or the other, it doesn't matter. But we're either gonna
Yep.
deduct something from the budget or whatever.
Fair enough. All I ask
Yes.
is that in every moment, we are respectful of what other people's opinions are. That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah. Okay, should we go into the budget process or should we wait until there's more bodies? Is there anything we're needing to do at this meeting to help kickstart it?
Well, maybe, Chip, you could just talk for a moment about kind of how you see this review of this year's budget process working. Can you kind of walk us through that again?
So if you want to say, a couple meetings ago, I brought up trying to look at what the annual report had for budget numbers, what the financial system had for budget numbers, and what the budgeting spreadsheet that's been used for years has for numbers. And to reconcile any differences found between them, knowing that the financial budget is the numbers that the auditors are looking at. For once, they're not looking at the spreadsheets. So if we are looking to say we need to know whether we're budgeting accurately, we sort of need to know whether or not the budget numbers that are in the financials are actually the budget numbers that in theory were shown to the taxpayers, knowing that the motion or article was an expense budget of X with other revenue sources and the net result to be raised by taxation. Generically, how it read. Well, if we can't prove the budget number that was presented there, which would be our total expenditures less the appropriations that were also voted on separately, well, then we're not starting with a value that is justifiable to begin with. So, Hal, who was voluntold
Yep.
that he wanted to do that comparison, I think he felt overwhelmed by the presentation of the spreadsheet versus the town report versus how it appears in the financials. And I just happened to glance at the annual report, and I noticed that the revenues and the expenditures in total are off by like 70 cents. Well, if they're off by 70 cents, what tells me that they might even be off by more than that. Because ideally, that 70 cents should be a sum to zero. So we don't sum to zero now. I did point that out in Monday night's council meeting when I gave the suppressed header budget to actuals for the current year 26 for the end of period 1. And I pointed that out basically in the general fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund, that the budgets are not balanced. So that action, I think, for the most part, we really have to stay focused on the general fund. I'm hoping the water sewer task force can do the deep dive into whether those budgets in the spreadsheet match what's in the financials, so that this group doesn't have to do that. Then from there, I did send to PD, DPW, police, and fire consolidated last 3 years transactional entries in one spreadsheet for each of their accounts based upon their department code. And ideally, what that's going to allow them to see is likely vendors that have been charged there, payroll that's been charged there, any journal entries that have been done to the various accounts, which I believe, honestly, they already probably know their account numbers, know how they're meant to be used. And they may point out deficiencies in an account being used improperly. But there is within the financial system the ability to put in budgetary notes when you enter the budgets and account notes when you account maintenance to help identify the intended purpose of an account, to help identify how one came up with the budget numbers. And that when you print reports, one of the choices is to include the account notes or include the budget memos. And so again, if we put it in, we can get it out.
I'd like
The recovery of the chart of accounts, though, I said we need to simplify, and then in an email today with Carter, I pointed out, well, sometimes simplification doesn't look that way when I say we need more funds. But we do have, like DPW has almost 9 places in the general fund that he budgets to, and he has to have employees report to. It's as if we are trying to manage employees through the budget.
Yes.
Instead of having employees work for someone who can explain what projects they're doing. And that in general, the DPW has general fund employee payroll and expenses, and it's not trying to track whether they were plowing the street or digging a hole. None of that matters to the budget process. What does matter is we have 16 guys, each at a rate of pay, each with expected hours, each with expected overtime, as a line. And that is an easier thing to target to than to have Tom try to decide whether or not it's going to snow this next winter. And he's trying to guess it in November, December of 25 or November, December of 26.
You know, in my work, I get paid. And then I have certain project numbers that I have to put my time into. And so I have a salary, but every week when I put in my paycheck, I have a list of where I spend my hours that week. And thankfully my list is, maybe 8 lines long, but I know other people that have 10 or 15 lines because they're literally doing work for several different projects. And so it makes sense to me that if I think what you just said is if you have a Department of Public Works employee, it doesn't matter whether they're out plowing the street or whatever, when it comes to budgeting, we just know we're gonna pay him this much. And then, when they actually do the job, there's some sort of timesheet or some sort of thing on that side. Is that what you're saying, Chet? And-
Yeah, the report of what someone is doing is a function of payroll reporting,
Yeah.
not a function of financial reporting.
Yeah.
So that the city council, can pull out right now and say, street maintenance is budgeted for $10,000 and we spent 50. Well, we didn't know we were gonna have a water main break, and consequently fixing that, broke the sewer line, and consequence of that, tore out an electric line. So the line that we need to charge it to is the work that was being done. But in the end, it's just the DPW hours being booked somewhere instead of somewhere else.
I'm right with you.
So,
So I guess my question is, I mean, when Lori describes, having to account for hours, does that feedback is that designed for us to say, we have to budget for this project next year and that includes a certain amount of time? Or, because that sounds kind of like a nightmare to me too, right? Like I would far rather just say, we need 14 DPW employees to do the following, period. And that's how, and that way, what's been so maddening, I think, to others in this room, and I'm looking for whether I'm correct about this, and I have found it personally frustrating, is the inability to just say, I want a list of all our employees and how much they're costing the city right now.
Right.
How much do DPW employees cost the city? How much do PD employees cost the city?
We've asked for that.
Yeah, and right now, there's no one appears to be able to give that to us.
It's a great way to fudge stuff,
Right.
which is the concern.
Right.
There's a danger of what I hear as the rationale normally when, let's say, DPW gets up, and I may be mistaken about this, but it's a feeling that, well, I'm getting 10% of an increase in DPW, in all of that work. And therefore, when you say to me, well, snow cost you $70,000 last year, and now you're billing it at $110 this year. Why the increase? The answer is, it doesn't matter where I put the monies, because I know I'm just getting what I had last year plus 10%, and I can just put a little here and a little there and a little there. And that doesn't help me think that we've really figured out how much of an increase we need, if any. Maybe it should have been a decrease. If you just
Well, this is,
assume.
okay, that's the difference between incremental budgeting
Right.
and what Kathleen and Marguerite from VLCT are teaching us to talk about in terms of priority-based budgeting.
Right.
Right? And it may be that one year you're going to raise it more than that 10%, but another year you might not raise it at all, right? Or you might decide, when I described this to the department heads this week and began to help them understand the shift that we're talking about, and part of what I was saying to them was, there's some real freedom in this for them actually, because at least this year we're not going to be able to do a check back to the community to do the whole priority process this year. I think we can do it next year. But this year, at the very least, we can say, here's the entire amount that's in the budget that's left in this year. And where do you actually think it should be prioritized in your area? Because our department heads are pretty smart. They actually know a lot of that. And they might not say, oh, we should spend this amount over here. They're just doing it because that's where we've been doing it for the last decade.
We do know that some of them are smart because they've done a top-down kind of budget, the Bucky's approach, which we've had questions about.
Right.
So I was just thinking about this. We talk a lot about the DPW employees because they really are the ones that are spread across all the different stuff. But let's take, I just thought of this, let's take the police department. You have somebody, a patrol guy or whatever, who's out there and he makes round number 50,000. But then Travis has to move him to Stone Garden or send him off to something else. He's still making 50,000. That's his salary. We know that. But at some point, this is what Chip was saying. Like, we're gonna charge Stone Garden for his time for that, and it's gonna come back in. But we still know that the guy makes 50,000,
No matter what.
no matter what. And we can-
I don't know that. I thought Stone Garden money was all
No,
overtime.
it's only an example.
Yeah.
It's only an example. I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that specific. I'm just saying, using it as an example. Because we know how much the police officers are making, I think. I mean, I'm guessing that we have a better clue because it's, the fire guys are making, an exact amount of money. And that's because that's what they're doing. It's our Department of Public Works that it seems to be, and so far over the place. And then the whole thing when Mayor Sullivan was trying to get Jonathan to understand how to keep track of his time, and it seemed to just go completely over his head that if he spent half an hour a day doing water and sewer budget work, then he writes it down on his timesheet as a half an hour or 3 hours or whatever. He would still make this amount of money, but then we can go and see how much time he's, or whoever is spending. And it is something we're gonna have to consider with Carrie, is because then we have to decide how her time is gonna be.
So I want to be careful because I think you're getting pretty close to the line that Chip's describing, which is trying to supervise employees by budget.
Right.
Is
Right?
that?
And I don't think that's where we want to go.
No.
Right? I want there to be, there is some normal level of accountability for, like in grant writing, we do need to know at the end of the day how many hours got put into working on this particular grant proposal or this reporting function, right? We're gonna have to track that. But I can't imagine trying to get to the point where unless they're employees who routinely work across department, right? And maybe Carrie would be an example of that. I don't know, we're gonna have to figure that out. But, in DPW, even in DPW, mostly we don't have that. We have sewer employees who are doing some water stuff, right? And every once in a while, we have DPW folks working on projects to support the sewer program. And that would matter. We would need to know how much of their time went.
Yeah.
But honestly, at the end of the day, I don't really care, I don't think, how much time they spent plowing versus how much time they did something else, unless we're trying to do some deep dive because we think there's really something going on.
There was a very specific reason.
A question.
Fair enough, for a short period of time. But I'll tell you now, if I had been an employee and I was expected to track everything, I would be tracking myself right out the door.
Yeah.
Yes, my
Well, but
It's not efficient in a lot of ways.
I
insulting.
believe me, in a job like this, I totally get that, and that's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is that when we open this up and we look for the Department of Public Works employees, there are different buckets that
Right,
say
I'm saying the
salary.
buckets need to go away.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm
too.
saying. And I think that's what you're saying, Chip, right? By and large.
Yeah, effectively, DPW, any DPW employee has the potential to work in 3 funds, water, sewer, and general. And what they do in each of those, you're attempting to think that you can budget to, and I can't tell you today how much time they're going to spend in water sewer. I can set up a pay type that will charge water and sewer for those hours. What I think is more efficient is water and sewer transfers of value to reimburse the general fund for employee time, so that I budget my employee in one place, and if they end up crossing, that other fund does a transfer of value to replenish in revenue to give and fund the employees out.
And that's the only time they would need to track their hours, right? If they
They
transfer,
always track their hours, and that's primarily because you never know when you're going to have or be needing to report a given value for reimbursement or submittal. So the worst case scenario, it rains like hell and you don't track truckloads of gravel that you've been hauling for 30 hours. And then it declared to be a FEMA event. And you don't have truck slips nor timesheets that back up the reimbursement. So yes, they still have to track their time, but I don't think they need to track their time because they turned onto a new street, and I'm trying to track how many hours are spent on a street, how many pounds of salt or sand are spread on a street. That's immaterial and a waste of time. But to know that the employee has done DPW work, and in the middle of the day he shifted and had to go to sewer because the sewer line broke, and that is still timesheet tracked, but they still get paid out of DPW general fund, and a calculation is done to reimburse out of the sewer fund.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. I was just in a neighborhood with a group of residents this afternoon where they were talking about the fact that they had about a half a dozen water breaks in their neighborhood over the last month, and that DPW was on it in a heartbeat, like out there and fixing those water breaks. And so, yeah, every time they would go out to do something like that, it would get noted. This is where I put in 4 hours today, right?
Right. And you got truck time, material time, and any time you touch a water main break, you are just taking the weakest point that broke, fixing it, and the next weakest point's going to break.
Well, that was the conversation we were having, yes. So, Chip, does NEMRIC have software built into it for this kind of reporting that you're describing, or is it something totally separate we should be using for that?
No, you can use what's called job costing in the payroll module, in which every hour that you put in, you can put a job code to it. Or, like I said, you can have pay types that directly book to expenditure lines in any fund, charge FICA and Medicare to whatever fund it needs to. What you have to worry about chasing then is what is the benefits for health insurance, retirement, anything that is a city expense that should chase the salary. And that is where, if you analyze time spent probably either every pay cycle or once a month, then you create the backup for journal entry to move value. Because again, you're still working and writing checks out of one account. And when you want to know how much DPW costs, they're not asking how much DPW costs to the water fund, the sewer fund, and the general fund. They're talking about payroll expenses.
Yeah.
And there are, by the same token, going with Lori's question, how do you deal with the city manager and the staff, if you will, on the second floor that need to be spread across funds? And right now, I think, we have no city manager, so there's no spread going on. We have no finance director, there's no spread going on. But in most cases, what a community does is budgets a value to transfer into the general fund so that the salary is completely shown in the general fund. And on an accrual basis, you can transfer that money the first of the year for the full amount water and sewer is going to reimburse the general fund. You can look at 1/12 every month. You can look at quarterly. Doesn't matter. But the key is that you fix where they are spent and you anticipate reimbursement from another fund.
And how do you calculate what the percentage is? What do you use to calculate what the percentage is that's going to be paid back to the general fund for, let's say, the city manager?
Like you talked about trying to do a time management study. And you have to also, in my humble opinion, you look at what has been the events that have taken time to be administered by the upper level management. For example, the water tower project, completely a water project, but the owner, representative typically, is the city manager. And so they may every day be in communication with vendors, with the state, with the feds. And that every 10-minute phone call adds up, and it's 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after the phone call and preparation and documentation. That's what chews up time. So to sit down and I got to pull out my yellow notepad every 15 minutes and write something down, not efficient. What is efficient is just recognizing under major projects, there's more time spent. And there could be entire months where there's no time spent as a construction project goes into winter break. So that formula, I know what was used in Rockingham Bellas Falls, where I was the manager, was 50% was town, 25% was water, and 25% was sewer.
And did you adjust
So
that every year? Did you adjust
Same
it?
number every year. Yeah.
And what made you think it was the same number every year?
It's the same percentage every year. It's whatever the contract was the number. Now, I might have been a little overzealous than most managers because I actually spent time at the water plant, at the sewer plant. And I have heard that there are some managers who never have even been to the facilities. So, it's not going to be the same everywhere.
See, I think that what our, unfortunately, our history has been that the treasurer's office, because of the billing, did 25% of their work to water and sewer, right?
That's right.
And then we cut that down to 12.5.
No, it's still 25. It's just
It's
12 and a half is in water and 12 and a
And
half
12 and a half in sewer. But the issue in the past was the city manager's office, who eventually, at its highest, was something
60.
like 60% was coming out of water and sewer. And there was no way to prove that that's what was actually happening. And so I think the concern is, but I think we've gotten that. I mean, I think the idea was bringing that down, because in my opinion.
This year, as just a placeholder, it's 10%.
Yeah, right.
And there's no rationale behind that, really, other than because there was no good data, even when Jonathan did try and track it last fall.
Right.
Because we didn't, there was no good data, I'll just say.
And
so we just made up that number this year.
And honestly, I don't know whether this is worth saying or not, but the way that I look at it is we're talking about a city manager and a finance person. And so I think we should probably figure out a percentage for water and sewer. But there's in my opinion, there's no reason to put a city manager's salary out of anything but the general fund. I mean,
Well,
even though
so I'll just push back a little bit.
Okay.
I can easily imagine, just take my example of my time. A significant amount of my time in the first 5 months as mayor,
Right.
functioning in many ways as city manager, has gone into water and sewer. I'm spending a lot of time deliberating with people and trying to figure it out. Now, is it 50%? No. Overall, it's probably right now, if I had to guess, more like 20% of my
And if
time.
it wasn't so screwed up because nobody would listen before, it wouldn't be that.
Well, maybe, or maybe, and or Pam, I'm sorry, I do that every once in a while.
It's changing.
Yeah, what kind of seem to be, yeah. Maybe what I hear Chip saying actually is, if you pick a number and it feels like it's staying the same, fine. But if you all of a sudden start building a new water tower and the city manager's time is going to get soaked in the water tower project for the next 8 months, it's appropriate to build a water tower for more of your time. So there has to be some check and balance in it too, to kind of keep an eye on it, I think.
Right.
And that's going to be, and the same thing, I suppose, for Carrie's position, right? When Carrie starts in that job, my assumption is, at this point, when we begin, almost everything is going to be general
Yes.
general fund.
I would suspect.
It's all just a mess, and we got to clean it all up, and it's a general fund function to do that.
Right.
But there could easily be a moment, I imagine, like take last night's conversation about how to get everybody signed up for getting a new water meter, right? If we had a person in that office who could provide genuine support to Corey right now in making those calls and tracking that data.
Right.
I could easily say that we want to put 30% of that person's time in that area. So I think it's a question, I think Chip's thought about how we ask people, not in an anal way, but just in general, to say, you know, this is what I did today. I spent 4 hours here, I spent 2 hours there. And the question I guess I have about that, Chip, is, in your experience in Rockingham, was it paper function and then got transferred into a database somewhere? Did people have access to a database where they entered their own information? How did they do it?
Everybody had a timesheet, and for the complicated ones like DPW, who could work water and sewer, every hour they had to tell whether or not they were on first shift, second shift, third shift, whether they had a shift differential because they were a leader in charge as opposed to just a worker, and whether they were on overtime, double time, triple time, holiday pay, and whether they were in water, sewer, or general government.
Wow.
So they had 64 pay types on a timesheet in which you could only put 15 minutes in one of those boxes.
And was that really necessary?
Yeah, so having said that's what it was, what should it have been?
Right.
So that desire was because they wanted to book directly, hour for hour, in 15-minute increments, directly to an expense, so that the expense would be identifiable to the then village trustees who didn't trust anybody on anything. So therefore, they could, see budget to actual, and the budgets never matched actuals, because they too had 100-year-old water lines.
And who knew what was going to happen every day, right?
Well, absolutely.
Right.
We never anticipated that some bozo was going to run not only into one fire hydrant, but 3 on the same street.
Same person? Of course.
Same person, same day, within probably 20 seconds of each other.
Wow.
Well, you shouldn't have them so close.
So the car got towed, but we still had to fix 3 fire hydrants and take the whole street out of service of water. So, you just don't know what's going to happen.
And I want to bring it back to like why we're talking about this, why we're going in through this spreadsheet is because what we're asking the department heads to do this year is tell us, hey, what goals are you doing? What line items actually go to what? And then a strong timesheet. I second what I'm hearing in this room. I agree with the 15-minute increment, redonkulous, but it would be helpful for informed decisions moving forward. Is like, wow, we're really seeing that the water, our water lines, and going back to the point that Chick brought up earlier, is we need to start thinking about the future. How is climate change going to impact us? Like we were really lucky this year with how our beautiful snowpack melted very consistently and slowly. That has not been the case for all of our neighboring towns for years.
Right.
And they have been underestimating their gravel, and they've been underestimating the time that they need, and they just weren't changing things, And so it's kind of, and the same with our water treatment plant. Unfortunately, it's going to be impacted. It's going to need more time, maybe upgrades. And so if we have timesheets that are current, not just for grant reporting, but also, as you're saying, at FEMA, they require high tracking. We never know what's going to happen. But we can actually then systematically say, hey, we actually spent a lot of time in the sewer this year. And I think moving forward and looking at what they were doing and looking at what they accomplished, we're not going to need that in the future because we just did all these upgrades. I was talking on time with the 20-year engineering stuff. That is a blip. Versus maybe water lines, we're seeing that those just continue to go up and we have not been adequately budgeting for it. So I see a benefit and to some extent of tracking time and where it's going. And I think that's part of the new budgeting process too, is we're gonna be able to catalog. We're not necessarily bucketing, but at least we're seeing an accurate picture of what's going on in the city, what people are spending their time doing.
Well, and I just want to add the conversation that I was on with you guys with the LCT folks. we have to know how much we're paying our employees because those are things that we don't have. I mean, if we have 15 employees, we have to know how much the total of their salary and benefits to plug in before we can ever look at what we want to do.
Right.
Because, you know, we've got, you have to put that in first. That, I mean, that's the way I look at it because it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a piece of the budget every single year.
Right.
And then once you get your known values into the budget, then you can start saying, what if we do this? And what if, I'd like to look at that. I'd like to look at this. And so we have to get the salary piece, in my opinion, under control so that we can move forward with what is it that they would like to do.
Yeah, under control or understanding.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
like it's seeing the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Okay, so then also going back, Chip, to you needing it, I could give you my Monday or Wednesday. I could give you really my whole Wednesday. I don't think you want to give me your whole Wednesday. But as far as walking me through, going back to the comparing, you know, our budget or, you know, what is in our report, what is in our financial situation, and then what's on that spreadsheet, or the audit numbers, excuse me. Can I work with you? I want to just block a time and work with you. Does a day, can we talk offline about that? Or I'm just basically publicly saying I will do my due. I'll take the baton and see how far I can run with it. How about that?
For just checking budgets for the current year.
Yes, for the current, again, I know I just switched from talking about future budgeting pieces, but again, to get a grip on the current situation.
Yes, so next week, send me a time you want to either video conference or telephone call.
Okay.
We
Great.
can go from there. Do you have a login to the Limerick Cloud?
I don't think so.
Okay, so.
I have one.
So,
That I haven't tried to use yet. So I can set her up on the one that I'm using, Chip, or not using, and we can share it.
yeah, so the piece, once I can put stuff out in Excel or I can put it in PDF, because what you're trying to compare is a spreadsheet that's been used for budgeting against how it was presented in the annual report for the FY26 budget against what's been entered in NIMRIC.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what the auditors are looking at is what's in NIMRIC. And if what's in NIMRIC doesn't match what was presented,
Because,
okay.
and is that because, so this is the budget from FY24. So what you're saying, Chip, is that these numbers here came from that extraneous spreadsheet.
Correct.
And not what came from NIMRIC.
Right.
Right?
I would totally believe that to be true.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I know it to
Because
be
I
true.
looked at it.
I know it to be true, because I'm the one who was working on it.
Yeah.
We never looked at anything out of NEMRIC, except I did print a full, you know, at that point when I would ask for it, I was getting 80 pages of balance sheet, and I was just running down through and trying to see if there was any logic to the number that I was looking at, and that's as close as I was able to get.
Yeah.
So is there any, I know that you had said, Chip, on Monday about the committee, the task force getting the budget sheets that you presented Monday with the breakouts so that we can start looking at either last year or what we're doing so far this year, whatever. Is that what you're doing, Carter, or is this like something else?
This is only looking at the budget number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only the budget number. If the budget numbers are wrong, I don't care what the actuals say, the budget number's off.
Right.
And
That's
we're
right.
either raising
Yeah.
too much or too little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at what point will we, because what I keep hearing in the community is, how come you guys aren't looking at what you're actually spending? And
The answer
that's
is we are. We
through
are.
this process.
By between now and the end of September,
Yeah,
we will absolutely be looking at, and we already are. I mean, Chip's report on Monday night
right.
was the first time in my history, certainly, and I understand it to be the first time in a very long time, that we had someone say, here's what we actually spent in the month of July and how it matches up against what we said we thought we were going to do in the budget. So we are looking at it,
Okay,
okay? And we're going to do it every month from here on out.
right. Okay. So is there,
And the bank wants these same reports in order to give us financing.
right. So is there anything that we can do, I mean, as members of the task force, to look at any?
I'm trying to figure out, Chip, if there's grunt work. Like, is there anything that the task force members can take on that isn't just busy work or, double work that you're going to have to do anyway around the task of interpreting whatever the department heads come back with and an additional task of reformulating what our budget category what our general ledger line items should be? Or is it really, at the end of the day, going to be something that you have to do, or maybe you do together with Carrie once she's in place on the 25th, right? Where you've got one person who's doing it and you can just check in with them every couple hours and see how they're doing.
So the committee, in my humble opinion, really wants to outline what the general budget should look like. If you see the revenues the way they're presented, the expenditures the way they're presented, and you say, really, let's take, and I hate to pick on DPW again, but DPW has so many categories, and from what we were just describing, if we had DPW General Fund had one salary line for all their employees, one health insurance line, one FICA Medicare line, then you would be looking at the present chart of accounts and saying, well, let's take these 5 different line items that say wages and combine them into one, DPW wages. Combine the budgets, combine the actuals, book everything right there to one line. Same thing for FICA Medicare, same thing for retirement, same thing for health insurance. And that type of work is what I started with Hal last Thursday. And I think, again, he looked at that and was like, oh my God, all I want to come up with is expense objects. And it's difficult to do. So, again, conceptually, does it make sense? The DPW, just like any other department, we can categorize them into employee salaries and benefits, office operations, vehicle or building maintenance, and then debt service. And so that each department's cost has the same type of classification groups in it.
Love it.
And is not down to, am I working in Stone Garden, or am I working in Sharp, or am I working in some other detail? Because the general government doesn't care about that detail. The third party you have to report to does. So it is a function of the payroll. And I can't remember the lady's name that was the dispatcher who does the reimbursements for Stone Garden. But KBS said she had wonderful documentation for the reimbursements, and it wasn't tied to the financials because the financials don't tie to that document. The reimbursement is based upon actual rate of pay and actual benefits associated at the time. And if we put that into the spreadsheet, we put that into the financials, we're tracking minutia. And we don't budget to that minutia. We don't anticipate the reimbursement from Stone Garden.
So do you want us to take whatever it was that you and Hal were looking at and go through and actually combine line items and give you an example of a spreadsheet that we think should be the new streamlined version? Like, what's the final product you want from us?
So typically I would take and put into Excel the account numbers and their descriptions. And then you, next to the account number, type in the account number you want it combined to.
Got it.
Because
Got it.
literally what that is a swap. For every account number, tell me the account number you want it to become. So part of this example, though, as I sent an email to Carter this afternoon, that right now we have a single-digit fund, 0 through 9. We are allowed to use A through Z, but if you think it's cumbersome to read your financials now, wait till you start putting letters in them.
Yeah, pass.
And so there is, in NEMRIC, you can have up to 26 character positions, including the dashes and the dots, and you can have up to 7 segments. And right now, you're using 1-2-2-2.2.
Right.
And so the limitation starts with, it goes least significant to more significant, left to right. And so you limited yourself to a 1-digit fund.
Yes. Yes. So is what he's describing what you're asking him for time to work on together, or is that you're talking about a different task?
So I was talking about a different task, which is, well, maybe I am then the best person to do both.
Well, I don't know yet. Keep going. What do you think you're asking
I'm
for?
trying to compare our budget. Well, sorry. Report these proposed to what's in NEMRIC versus what the auditors have.
So let's let you just work on that.
I think that's its own piece.
I do
but
too.
as I if I do that successfully, that's making a huge assumption right now. As if I master that, then I'm probably pretty good at, oh, I remember this was over here and and I'd probably be able to weave the next task a little bit better than if I passed it to Lori. Am I wrong in that line of thought?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. One of the things that you'll uncover is how convoluted it is to come up with a damn budget.
Yep. And I want to know that, as we move forward into this new project, is what did we do and why, but also the
If we're going to
complexity.
have kings, can we also have czars? You can be the budget
Yeah,
czar.
Tom,
Yes.
Tom had a quite
What about Zarina?
Czarina, you can be the budget czarina.
I wasn't ever going to be queen.
Tom had a quite lengthy conversation with me on Thursday after Hal left and said, all I could do is guess what's going to happen for street maintenance, and guess what's going to happen for plowing, and guess what's going to happen for all of my different expense areas. And I looked at him and I said, so you had no idea that Main Street was going to be washed away by the water main, and you had to reconstruct 1.5 miles of road. No. And I said, so then you got to answer to the public why your budget of $50,000 turned out to be $1.5 million. And yet somewhere else they didn't notice that every other budget, 0 was spent.
Because that's what a good manager does. I mean, at that point, a manager rolls with whatever just happened and then just over here to make sure that they can make up for it.
Yes.
Right?
And so what we try to do is eliminate that
Yeah.
from being necessary by saying, here's the pool. And so when it goes to that priority budgeting, the worst case scenario is to actually budget for the priorities, and every year change your priorities and expect your budget line items to not grow. So you track your priorities externally to your budget.
Understood.
Right? So you say, hey, we planned on replacing all of the flower gardens with something else, green grass. Well, DPW hours are DPW hours.
Yeah.
And in the end, somebody's got to be able to take a picture and say, see, it was flowers, now it's grass. We did it.
Yeah.
But not that we budgeted to do it.
Understood. I do understand that.
So I'm just gonna ask this question because, and I want to use the recreation department as an example when you talk about charter accounts. So I'm looking at the budget, okay? So if I heard what you said, and I could be completely wrong because sometimes I don't always hear right. So currently we have the expenses for the recreation department broken down into like management and then the senior center, the Prouty Beach, recreation programs. So if I'm hearing correctly, the recreation department would have salaries and everything that goes with salaries. And then underneath those, we might break it out into the different areas. And then we would have maintenance. And then under maintenance, we might have it broken out into different areas.
Well, it would be broken out, Chip, correct me if I'm wrong, by a piece of your 9-digit code, right? You could have Prouty Beach would have its own number in that 9-digit code,
Right, but
and wherever it came from, it's going to have that 9 digits. So if you wanted to see what took place in Prouty Beach, you could
Right.
just hit a button and see it, right?
But it would all be,
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So recreation is set up a lot like DPW.
Yes.
They have a lot of lines for a lot of areas.
Yeah,
And so if we are inundated with the campground, then we might not be doing something else in some other section. And so we do have and can anticipate so many full-time and so many part-time employees. But an employee doesn't work at any one area. And therefore, again, think of it just like projects. On their timesheet, they say where they were. And it's a report out of payroll that says how many hours were spent at Prouty Beach. But it's not a function to budget hours for Prouty Beach.
right,
Exactly.
right.
That's where I think.
So-
Right.
So we can see what actually happened,
Right.
but we're not budgeting to it.
Right, so we could just have one big recreation department maintenance of this amount, but out of that big maintenance budget, we're gonna break it down into boat maintenance and yeah, because I'm looking at this and every single grouping has maintenance lines. And so so the budget might be for maintenance, but then what we're gonna see is where did we actually spend the maintenance? We spent some of it on a boat, we spent some of it at Prouty Beach.
So the question again, for every line item you're going to put in for an expense for tracking, you intend to budget to it.
So even if we just have a major heading of maintenance,
Header accounts don't have budgets because they're not actualized. So you can have 20 lines with no budget, except the first line in the subgroup has to have a budget so that the subtotal means something. But that also means you're expecting that every invoice and every employee who works on maintenance is going to have a direct code to link to. They work on a boat. And then what level do we go if we have 5 boats?
I guess
The point is,
I'm just confused then, so. Okay.
I think this is, I'll tell you where I think we are. I think that what we need to do is paint by numbers. So let's let Carter and Chip have this first conversation. And then let's have a conversation about how we can begin to use what Carter's learning as she's kind of digging around in here about how we consolidate. And I think it will become clear as soon as we start to do it, what it is we're actually talking about. I think the practice will actually make it clarify.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we can commit to simplifying, not spinning
Right.
our wheels to make it even more complicated.
That's right. Our overall goal here is to make it simpler, right? I mean, when I started this process, when I first got elected, I was having a conversation with a member of the board at Community National Bank who said to me, every month they put a 2-page document in front of me, and I can see all the activity of the organization in 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Chip's really been teaching the council to do with these suppressed header reports that he's been creating on the balance sheet. Same thing. You're teaching us to look at where are there anomalies that demand we go deeper to try and figure out what happened. So let's not worry about it too much more at the conceptual level, because I think it'll get clear when we work.
We've learned that we can be spun. The more categories, the more little bits to break down. We've
Right.
learned how to get spun in.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Right. So I guess the only other piece I want to say is that, so if I have a maintenance budget at my house, it doesn't matter whether I use it for the dishwasher or the shower or the garage door. It's all under maintenance.
Yes.
And is that what we're talking about?
That's kind of what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
And additionally, the piece that we're not talking about, but I know exists and we're going to have to be working on, is we also should be eventually aiming for a capital expenditures 5-year plan, right? Which we have a practice of having done in the past. Our department heads, I think, were trying to treat it very seriously, and it just got blown all to hell. But we have to go back to that.
Yeah.
Because when it does, where your question matters is, when did we budget for a new washing machine, and when did we budget for a new dishwasher, right? And that's when we got to think about that.
Yes.
Yeah, that came up in yesterday's feasibility study. They were like, well, typically municipalities budget, and I was like, don't even go there. But again, it is for future planning. So that
Right.
way, all these water main breaks, it's like, oh, we should just replace it. So
Clearly, in that spot,
Yes.
we need to just replace the bad water line.
problematic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing that we're trying to keep it an hour, we're doing
We're already
our
over.
casual, like running, and hey, good conversation, understanding, it's important. I'm taking off the piece, and I'm either Monday or we'll talk offline. And the one thing about, I left on here because we didn't quite talk, but in some emails, just to like air and understand and make it public, is that there is a 5-year projection needed for the water and sewer piece. And is the water and sewer task force handling that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then is one still needed for the general fund?
Yes.
And what's the deliverable on that? Is that something that maybe Carrie could work on, or is that something that added to my third to do?
No. So that's a
Yeah.
very good question. Yes, by roughly the end of September, beginning of October, we're going to have a 5-year cash flow document for each of the 3 funds: the general fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund. And the reason we need all 3 is because we're going to borrow in all 3 of those categories,
Yeah.
and our lenders are demanding it, right? So the water fund is the one we're going to have to show to the Vermont Bond Bank.
Yeah.
The sewer fund is one we're going to have to show to Pasumsic. And the general fund, we're going to have to show to Pasumsic. And my guess is the Vermont Bond Bank's going to want to see that one too, actually. But, and having been through this once, I hope we will have a better way of going about it in the next round. But I've understood now the wisdom that we can also over-engineer the 5-year projection, which is where I started us, and we spun our wheels for nearly a month last spring, because I kept trying to figure out how to use an automated system to try and create those. But in fact, what we're really doing is saying, look, it's a function of sitting down with the sewer budget and saying, how much income do we expect? When do we expect it? Going through the year, right? How much expense do we expect in which categories? When do we expect to spend it? And you just lay out a simple spreadsheet for each year, and then you got to figure out, is there anything unusual that's going to happen next year? Like, I was just in a meeting, I don't know when it was now, looking at appraisals, the whole process of doing appraisals, right? And the fact that we've got to pay to have ourselves audited. Now I can't remember what that conversation was, where we were, but every 2 years it's going to mean another $150,000, and we've got to figure out how to build that into the spreadsheet, right? But that's all we're really talking about. What do we bet it will go up in terms of cost to expend this, to manage it? And are there anything unusual things? So the truth is, while it sounds overwhelming, by the middle of September, I suspect it will not be very hard to put those together.
Great.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm gonna hold on to that.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So when's the next meeting?
Good question. I'm gone the next 2 Fridays.
Lucky you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have my work cut out for me, so.
3 weeks? 4 weeks?
Let's see.
Not 4.
No.
No. Okay, so
Um,
pulling up my calendar.
Yeah, next Friday, but, yeah.
Let's skip next Friday. Is that, can I just go ahead and say that, because I'm gonna.
Yep.
So when is this next meeting?
I'm pulling
We're
my
working it. We're
calendar
working it.
as quickly as I can. Okay, so not the 15th. You're out the 22nd still.
Yes.
I got a note on the 29th.
So he can be voluntold whenever we want.
Yeah. Can we pencil in the 22nd just because even sans Rick, I might be in a good place
To report back what you're
To
working on.
report out.
That's a great idea.
because then there will be a city council meet. No, wait, there's a city council meeting on that one. Yeah, I still think it'll be worthy. Yeah.
If you decide to do it on the 22nd, post it on the website.
We're going to post it now
Okay.
and then take it off if necessary.
Okay.
Okay?
Great. Yeah.
Because
So-
otherwise I won't get to hear because I'm not in your loop. And then
Yeah.
I'll be royally pissed off because I have to get
In general, just so you know, I often provide a courtesy notice to Pam and Ann
And to
to
Genevieve.
just say, well, I do
I
it
see
to a
her
number.
name there.
There are a number of people for whom it's a high level of
Yeah.
concern, and so I share it because it's not
Yeah.
secret information.
Yeah.
No, it's not secret. It just makes no sense that she's such a media.
She's not media. That's why I call it a courtesy copy, not a media copy.
There you go. Okay, so, I'm feeling good.
Yep.
Good.
I got some fun ahead.
All
Okay.
right. So as soon as we hang up, I'm going to book it for the 22nd for our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Chip.
Thanks, Chip.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chip.